What's the most insane coincidence you've experienced? I was once mugged by 4 guys on one of the main shopping streets of Nairobi, Kenya. One of the guys had me in a chokehold, and just before I was about to pass out, they dropped me and ran. At the time I didn't know why. 12 months later, sitting on a beach on an island in Thailand, I meet a British couple who did business in Kenya and we start to talk about how dangerous it was getting for foreigners. They described an incident the year before of turning a corner and seeing a white guy being mugged, and a shopkeeper rescued him by hitting one of them over the head with a bat. They were in the same street, on the same day, at the exact same time I was there. It was me who they witnessed being mugged. What are the odds of randomly meeting up on a beach in Thailand a year later? I live in Australia and I have for almost my whole life, but I was born in Dubai. Every weekend in Dubai my mum would take me to the Hilton Beach Club and sit me in front of the pastry chef and eat. We moved away from Dubai really early on, so I don't even remember much. Fast forward to 17 years of age, a new kid at school had just moved from a nearby town. We became friends and we both loved cricket, and we practiced a lot together. My dad and I were giving him a lift home after we were practicing and dad asks, "Where were you born?" And he says Dubai, and the conversation continues, and I say I was too, etc. Then he says, "My parents used to be the pastry chefs at the Hilton Beach Club, apostrophe," and this blew me away. Here we were 16 years later, halfway across the world, and every weekend I sat in front of his parents and ate what they made for me. To this day I still get goosebumps thinking about it. I mean, what are the chances? Awesome story. Those pastry shops were so good. I'd always eat the strawberry tarts, and they were so delicious. My biggest coincidence story has a bit of Dubai in it too, though not as crazy as yours. I lived in Dubai for 2 years and then moved back to Canada. 5 years later in university dorms, one of my friends from the school I went to in Dubai ended up also choosing this university, was placed in my residence house and same floor and even the same hall, only a few doors down. A few years ago I into a cab heading out for the evening in downtown Toronto. Shortly after being dropped off I realized I left my phone in the cab. I tried calling it with no luck. I called the cab company, but because I had flagged the cab and paid cash they had no real way of knowing which cab I was in. I figured the phone was as good as gone and went about my night. Many hours later, and having moved around the city quite a bit, I'm ready to call it a night, so flag another cab. Sitting in the back seat I start to think the driver looks familiar and realize that I'm in the same cab I took earlier. He hasn't found a phone, but I start looking anyways and sure enough there it is, jammed in the seat. Me and my flip phone were happily reunited, only for me to put it in a washing machine 2 days later. I have a similar story. I was going to a My Chemical Romance and Blink 182 concert back in college. I went with a couple friends, and we got a hotel nearby Jiffy Lube in order to get plastered. I got some Wendy's on the way to the concert to eat in the parking lot beforehand, but left it in the taxi. I was drunkenly devastated. After the concert we hail a cab and I get in. Feel a brown paper bag at my feet and look down. That beautiful ginger on the bag was smiling up at my inebriated eyes as if to say, "I knew you'd come back," apostrophe. And yes, of course I ate it. An American friend of mine by the name of Tom took his family on vacation to check out Antarctica. He met an Australian guy named Paul on Christmas Day in Antarctica. They didn't exchange contact info. A year later, Christmas Day, they take their vacation to Machu Picchu. He is looking down at a map when he hears, "Hey Tom, how the hell are you?" It was Paul, taking his family on their annual trip as well. Never could explain this payphone incident. Saturday night out with friends. We decide to call my friend Al to see if he wants to join us. This was in England long before mobile phones, so we had to use one of the iconic red phone booths. Someone was already using it, so we had to wait a few minutes. Guy leaves and we cram in the booth. Now, in those days, in order to make a call you would first get a dial tone, then call the number. When the person answered you would hear a bunch of beeps, at which point you insert the coins. So I pick up the phone, but hear no dial tone. I hang the phone up and try again. Still no dial tone. Seems to be still connected to the previous call. I say hello to see if anyone is still on the line. Person answers hello. It was my friend Al. He had just picked up his phone to make a call, and somehow, miraculously, without even dialing his number, we were connected. We all went to the pub after and tried to figure out how the hell this happened, but it remains a mystery. If I did not have my friends with me at the time as witnesses, I would have believed it was my mind playing tricks on me. In 2004 I was 18 and on a 3-week tour of Europe. I was at THR Louvre and had just experienced the cluster duck that was the Mona Lisa exhibit. After looking at it for 2 minutes I started to wander around aimlessly. As I was walking, an older couple asked if I knew how to get to the Mona Lisa exhibit. I told them yes, and because I'm horrible with directions, I'd be happy to walk there myself. They were really nice and very appreciative that I was taking time to help them. They asked me where I was from, US and Nashville, but I mentioned my parents were immigrants from Italy. They told me they were from Portugal on anniversary. We talked a bit more. Told them my name and they were really excited about, since I shared the same name as their grandchild. Anyways, we get to the exhibit and I go to part ways and shake their hands, but get pulled in for 2 massive hugs and a kiss on the cheek. They give me their address and say anytime I'm in Portugal to stop by and I'll have a place to stay and eat. We take a group photo and leave. 7 years later I'm in Munich for Oktoberfest. I'm standing outside my hotel waiting for my friends when an older couple ask if I know how to get to the fairgrounds. Again, I'm shit with directions. So since I'm headed there I tell them they can just follow me and my friends. Again we start talking about where we are all from. Now, I have a memory like an elephant and once they mention they're from Portugal I start to think maybe these are the same people. I ask them if they have grandkids and they say they have 6. I ask if one of their names is Historiopherman. They look at each other sort of surprised and say yes. They ask how do I know that and tell them that I had met them 7 years prior in Paris at the Louvre. The old lady gets really happy and starts crying and starts to hug me. They say they remembered me now and asked why I never came to visit. That they had our picture in a frame on their wall and always wondered what happened to the nice American boy. We spent the next 3 hours drinking beers and catching up. Luckily we got there early, so we were able to get an empty table and they bought all the beers the entire time. This time they demanded I give them my email so we could keep in contact. I even added their son on Facebook. 2 years later I go and visit for the summer and sure enough there on the wall amongst the rest of their family pictures is 18 years old me standing between them. I'll tell you all something. I'm a bit of an introvert and can be awkward when meeting new people simply because I like to get a feel for who they are and where their boundaries are, but never in my life, other than with my own family, and maybe not even then, have I ever felt more at home and that I belonged than the 3 weeks I spent with them. We still talk weekly. It's like having a second family. In high school, my friend set me up with her boyfriend's cousin. Let's call him Jack. Jack and I were walking around an amusement park and started talking about recent family spring break vacations. Turns out, both Jack and I had been in Las Vegas during the same week. We stayed at the same hotel. The conversation changed subjects when Jack stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and said I saw you in Las Vegas. I thought he was full of crap. There's no way he would remember some random girl among the thousands of people there. He told me the exact place he saw me and that my sister and I were posing for a photo. We got back to my house and found the picture. There were Jack and his brother in the background. When I was in grade 2, our family moved from Manitoba to Arizona for a year due to a contract my dad was working. We rented out the house fully furnished for the year. While in Arizona, we flew to Alberta one weekend. On the flight from Arizona to Alberta, I sat beside a boy my age and we started talking. It went something like this. Me, what city are you from? Him, Winnipeg. Me too. Me, what school do you go to? Him, school name. Me, cool. I used to go there too. Me, what street do you live on? Him, street name. Me, I lived on that street. It turns out, his family was renting our house while we were gone. So I was sitting beside the boy who was sleeping in my bed while we were in Arizona. When I was 13, I was on a family holiday in Venice. We were on a gondola, Venetian punt boat, touring the waterways of the city. We got halfway down a long passageway, and another gondola passes us by, carrying a man and a woman, and the punter, the man and my dad lock eyes, exclaim one another's name, and have a quick handshake as our gondolas pass. Myself, brother and mother sit quietly, pretty stunned, while the woman on the other boat explodes with what? Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Question mark? Who's that? Exclamation mark. Question mark? Exclamation mark. How do you know him? Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. We floated off in the other direction. Comparatively swag and chill. Turns out it was a guy my dad went to university with, and hadn't seen him since. They haven't even contacted one another since. It's crazy they recognized one another, considering they were both in their late 40s now, passing fleetingly on 2 gondolas in Venice. About 10 years ago I tried to get into Six Flags with a tiny keychain Swiss Army knife. It literally had a dull 1-foot blade. They told me I could either throw it away, take it to my car a mile away, or enter locker for like $10. So I decided to hide it in the planter. I looked down and saw a big piece of bark laying in the dirt and figured it would be a good hiding place. I picked it up and found another ducking mini Swiss Army knife. I placed mine next to the first and went into the park. When I returned, the other knife was gone and a smiley face was etched into the dirt in its place. My family used to take little summer vacations. One summer, I was about 7 to 8, we stayed at a campground about 4 hours from home. There were a bunch of kids there, and one day we all started playing tag. I was it, and was chasing another young boy, and when I tagged him, I pushed him too hard, and he fell and broke his arm. I remember the scene vividly. Fast forward to college. I became good friends with my neighbor in the dorm, and we ended up getting a place together our sophomore year. The following year, no longer living together, we went out for a few beers and the topic of broken bones came up. I've only broken one bone, and it was my arm, when I was 7. Some kid at a campground pushed me over while playing tag. It was me. Still can't believe it. One time I parked, without even noticing, next to a car with the same license plate as me. I had her NA plate. She had her NH plate, both with the same 5-digit number. The weirder thing was that both of us had kept the plate as a novelty plate because the state wasn't making 5-digit plate numbers anymore. But a family member wanted to keep it. In my case, my dad wanted to keep his dad's plate. My uncle hired a car, didn't look at which spot it was in and just pressed the key to see what opened. He went up, and it was the right make, model and color, but an absolute tip inside. So he went back and complained and the sales assistant took him out to a different car. Exactly the same but clean inside. His key could open the higher one in some random person's car which happened to be parked in the same lot. That happened to my husband and me. Valet kept bringing us the wrong car. He showed us the keys. We confirmed they were ours and told him it was the silver Toyota. He brought us the wrong car again. We told him it wasn't our car, and he insisted for a good 15 minutes that either those weren't our keys, or that was our car. Finally my husband grabbed the keys, went and found our 4Runner, and started it up. Turns out our keys started both our silver Toyota 4Runner and someone else's silver Toyota sedan. My first semester of college, I moved out of state. I was first to move into the apartment, and had a few days to myself. After orientation I found my new roommate sitting on his bed. When I introduced myself, he asked where I was from. When I told him, he said, "I used to have a friend named Simon." I said I used to have a friend named Will. We were best friends in 1st and 2nd grade, until his family moved. When I was in high school, I was aimlessly playing around a library one day. Like any large public high school, our library had literally thousands of books quietly tucked away in shelves, and rarely, if ever, touched. That day I pulled a book at random from a shelf in the back, and sat down to read it. After opening it, a slip of paper fell out, and I quickly recognized the dashed 10 digits written on it as a phone number. I hastily read the number, and it was my older sister's number, who had graduated my high school years earlier. Someone wrote her number and tucked it away into a random book in the back. until I found it years later. I once went camping with about 5 or so other friends. This was about 3 years ago now in Pisgah National Forest in the mountains of NC. There are some amazing waterfalls in this area. One called Rainbow Falls. It's about 125 feet from river above to ground below. If you keep hiking past Rainbow Falls, there is a much smaller waterfall in the river above Rainbow Falls, called Turtleback Falls. It's basically a very slippery rock with water running over it, which ends with about a 4 to 5 foot drop. This is really cool because you can climb up it using a rope someone attached to a tree above, walk out to the middle of the rock and slide down. There's also another spot that's about 1/3 the way up the side of Rainbow Falls where you can climb up some branches, then basically rappel down a rock face, shimmy out on a ledge, and jump about 30 to 40 feet into the nice deep pool in the river at the bottom of the waterfall. It was when my friends and I had climbed out on the ledge and were about to jump when we noticed that there was another group of people hanging out in the river below us. They started cheering us on and encouraging us to jump, as it is slightly terrifying. Anyways, we ended up jumping, and once in the river below we talked some of the other group of people. They seemed pretty cool. Fast forward 1 year. We had so much fun a year earlier that we decided to go back again. This time we camped a little further down the river, and we decided to climb on some rocks downriver from the waterfall, about 300 or 400 yards from the waterfall. I was climbing on one rock and found something that looked like a strap of some kind. Assuming it was trash, I didn't touch it, but when I pointed it out to one of my friends, he noticed it was actually a GoPro camera in a waterproof case. So he decided to keep it. Fast forward a couple of days. My friend and I purchased a charger for that type of camera and decided to see what was on it. We start watching the video and see some guys climbing up the place where we jumped off the side of the waterfall in front of the cameraman, who was also climbing. The cameraman starts to get closer, and we see something that made us instantly start to freak out. On the back left shoulder of the person in front of the cameraman was the exact tattoo that my friend has. When he gets even closer, we realize that the person on camera was my friend, who I was currently sitting right beside. Later, the cameraman gets up to the ledge and we see me and the rest of my friends from over a year ago. There are also some pictures and videos of us jumping from the ledge. We watched the rest of the video in a stunned state, and the last 30 minutes or so of the footages of the cameraman going up to the river above Rainbow Falls and sliding on Turtleback Falls, apparently losing his GoPro in the water after going over the falls. The camera sinks to the bottom and you can even see fish swimming by and staring at the camera. Now think about where we found the camera, 400 to 500 yards downriver from the bottom of the large waterfall. So apparently this camera made its way downriver over a 125 foot waterfall and got lodged in a rock 500 yards away, and my friends and I found it a year later with video footage of us from the previous year on it. It took us a little while to decide on this as being the most reasonable explanation. Edit 1. So everyone is asking me to post the video and pictures and stuff. My friend still has the camera. I asked him about it, and he said he thinks he saved it to his computer. I'm at work now, check back later. I think I should be able to get a hold of them. Edit 2. A lot of people are wondering if I knew the cameraman. The answer is no, I did not. I suspect he was one of the people I mentioned being at the bottom of the river while we were about to jump. We jumped off this rock multiple times, so he might have followed us up one of the times, although I don't specifically remember this. Edit 3. For anyone who is still interested, my friend says he can't find the videos on his computer, but he is trying to recover them from the GoPro. As a college sophomore, I went on a trip to France by myself. I was sitting in Notre Dame Cathedral, listening to music, when a girl I dated in high school sat down near me, totally at random. We were both speechless when we saw one another there, out of the blue, in a foreign country within a vast cathedral. This coincidence is straight up sorcery. Was kayaking with my family along a river when I thought I would pull a fast one on my brother. So I yell, "Hey, look, a bald eagle," to my brother, so I can do the whole "made you look" game. But to my surprise, he goes cool. At this point I think he is just messing with me, so I can't say the whole "made you look" thing. So then I look up, and a bald eagle swoops down, catches a fish and flies to the other side of the river. One of the most magical coincidences ever. I love the coincidences where you call it in advance. I had one in college where a friend and I were being competitive assholes in a communication in groups class. The day we were to receive our grades on our group presentations. He turned to me and said, "I'm going up to get my A." Not to be outdone, I said, "Well, I'm going up to get my A+." Sure enough, despite the fact I had never seen an A+ on anything before and assumed such a thing did not exist, he had an A and I had an A+. I cannot decide which is weirder. 1. Did a summer Shakespeare thing for teenagers. Next summer, one of the assistant directors puts together a trip to London for a group of us. We go to London, and while visiting the Globe Theatre, we run into another kid who was in the same Shakespeare thing we all were, except he was in London for separate reasons. 2. Go out to dinner to celebrate my wife's birthday. Sat next to a couple. We start talking. The wife is also celebrating her birthday and it's on the same day. Haha. Crazy. We hit it off and exchange information to hang out again. 2 months later I invite them to my birthday party and turns out the husband has the same birthday as me. If you enjoy watching these videos, make sure to hit the subscribe button and like this video. Thanks.